This is Lori Eccleston, and I'm going to take you through completing an addiction offender cycle. The addiction offender cycle will start with the ACT, and this is just an example that we did in class the other day. The client in the treatment facility called the staff member a bitch. Okay, that is the actual behavior that occurred. And when you're doing an addiction offender cycle, you want to start with the actual behavior. It needs to be something that if I'm standing there, I can actually see and hear somebody doing. So in this case, I would actually see the staff member, I would actually see the client, and I would actually see them in proximity, and I would actually hear the client call the staff member the name. Okay? So you start with the ACT. Okay, the very next thing, and I'm going to turn the camera here, and hopefully we'll get focused in on it here pretty quick, is you want to go to the activating event. Okay? So this is the event that actually starts the whole process off that leads to the person engaging in the negative behavior that they engage in. So the activating event in this case was the client was told that they could not use the phone. Okay, so this is what got the thinking process started. So the very next step that we have here is the initial thoughts or thoughts. Usually we'll just, in the addiction offender cycle, just put one thought in here. Because when we move on to turning these into thinking reports, we can expound on that. So this is kind of the very first automatic thought that comes to a person's mind. And in this case, the client thought, how dare they tell me I can't use the phone? So that was their very first initial thought. Well, very next thing is, what was the initial feeling or feelings that occurred when they had the initial thought? Well, this client in particular was angry, frustrated, had some aggravation. They even had some fear because they were, really wanting to use the phone to talk to a family member, and they were afraid they weren't going to be able to have contact with that family member. So there was several emotions, and usually there are more than one emotion occurring with each thought. Okay, the very next thing on our ALC would be the using thoughts or fantasies. Okay, now this is what your thought that you kind of fantasize about doing. So this is actually the thought you have about what you're going to do about the activating event. So the using thought or fantasy here was, I'm going to cuss her out. Okay, it's real simple. Then we go on to the urge to use or act out. And this is your actual, what it says there, physiological, biological response. This is what's going on with your body when you're feeling those emotions, when you're having those thoughts. And in this case, they felt tense, they felt an elevated blood pressure, pulse, heart rate. They even had a headache and were flushed a little bit in the face, turning red. So this is actually the biological, physiological response, okay? Then very next is your permission statement or thought. What is the thought you have that gives you permission to do the fantasy, to do the act? Okay? Well, in this case, it's real simple. She deserves it. She deserves it because she told me I couldn't do something I wanted to do. So she earned it. She deserves it. Okay, the very next one is the planning or the setup. Okay, this is what you actually have to think about doing to accomplish the negative behavior or the act. Okay, and it's real simple in this case. Sometimes they can be really complicated. You have to, talk to somebody, you have to call somebody, you have to go over to their house, you have to get in the car, okay, you have to get a ride. Okay, so there may be some really complicated ones, but this one's pretty simple. I will walk up and call her a bitch. So all you had to do is walk up to her, and here we are back at the act. And that's what he did. Okay, our very next circle here is what is the payoff? And this is those 5 basic needs. What of those basic needs was the client trying to achieve by doing the act? And in this client's case, he wanted mastery, which is control, and he felt his freedom was being impinged on, so he was trying to achieve freedom as well. Okay, so that was the payoff for him. And then we go to the internal consequence. And these are usually feelings like anxiety, remorse, guilt, shame. Okay, so what kind of internal feelings were the clients having after they committed the act? And in this case, this client felt some anxiety because he's probably going to get in trouble for calling the staff member a name, and also probably felt some remorse for, doing what he did. He probably shouldn't have handled himself that way. So then the very last circle before our top one is, what is the self-soothing thought? What is the thought that you tell yourself to get yourself back to the final circle that we're going to talk about is your calm state. Okay, so in this case, it's real simple. The self-soothing thought was all is well. Okay, real simple. And then that's what brings the client back to a calm state. And then the client is just waiting for another activating event to set the whole cycle off again. But we will see in our next video how to translate this from an addiction offender cycle into a thinking report. So until my next video, that would be it for addiction offender cycles.